Welcome to Living a Nutritious Life. I'm Keri Glassman, a celebrity registered dietitian nutritionist. Join me every Tuesday on YouTube and your favorite podcast platforms as I bring in some heavy hitters to share the latest in nutrition and wellness science. We dive deep into food, sleep, stress, relationships, and so much more. Your weekly guide to a happier, healthier, more nutritious life. Are you the friend who's always being asked for health advice? Now imagine turning that passion into a fulfilling career with our Become a Nutrition Coach program. Step into a world where your enthusiasm for wellness becomes the heart of your own thriving business. With me as your professor and guide and coach on our user-friendly digital platform, you can learn from anywhere at your very own pace. It's perfect for your busy life. Envision empowering others to live their healthiest lives, all while growing a career you love. You're not just gaining a certification here, you're joining a community of like-minded professionals ready to support and celebrate with you every step of the way. So what are you waiting for? It's time to nourish your future and help change lives, including your own. Head over to nutritiouslife.com/BNC for a free class and a sneak peek of the program. Your journey to becoming a nutrition coach begins now. Peptides this, peptides that. If you've been wondering what the heck are peptides, or have never heard of peptides at all, or are wondering why peptides seem to be all the rage these days, then this episode is for you. Welcome, I'm Keri Glassman, your host of Living a Nutritious Life. If you care about not only your lifespan, but your health span, and you already do the basics, you drink water, you move your body, you know you need sleep, etc., then this episode is a must listen. I've personally been very excited and interested in peptides and all of the possibilities that come with them. So I was thrilled to sit down with Dr. Chris Renna for this episode. Dr. Chris Renna, DO, is one of the nation's foremost leaders in preventive and longevity medicine. For over 2 decades, Dr. Renna has redefined what it means to age well, guiding patients beyond symptom management into vibrant, personalized health. In 1992, he founded Lifespan Medicine, now with flagship clinics in Santa Monica, Miami, and Dallas. Dr. Renna quickly realized early in his career that traditional medical training was designed to treat disease, not to create health. This revelation became the catalyst for a lifelong pursuit, helping people live longer, better, and more intentionally. To Dr. Renna, medicine is not just a science, it's an art. He is the author of The End of Pain and Balance Your Brain, Balance Your Life, and is a sought-after speaker who is presented at the Global Wellness Summit and other premier health forums worldwide. His full bio is in our show notes, so check it out. In this episode, we go over what peptides are, the specific peptides that are being used for brain health, recovery, sleep, and skin, one of my favorite topics. You are going to love it. I'm telling you, you'll be taking notes on this episode. And if you love it, please rate, review, and share. Okay, let's do this. Hello, Dr. Chris Renna. I am so incredibly excited for this conversation today. Welcome to the Living a Nutritious Life podcast.
Thank you very much.
So peptides. Peptides have been a really hot topic for a little while now, but it seems as though they are getting hotter and hotter, and they are not just having 15 minutes of fame. They seem like they are here to stay, and they're only becoming, I think, not only more widely known and understood by many, but it just seems like we're learning of new ones every day. So I really wanted to take this opportunity to chat with you specifically about peptides, and we can touch on the GLP-1s, but more so, I wanted to really talk about all these other peptides out there, because I think when people hear the word peptides, I think at least listeners here, I think they know a few different things. I think some people either think peptides, they think, I've heard that word before. I know it has something to do with wellness and health. Or I think they know peptides. I think it's a protein, a small protein. Maybe they know that. And then I think there's maybe another group of people that might know peptides, the GLP-1s, that whole weight loss category. Those are peptides. But I think actually breaking down what all these other peptides are, how they're being used, how you can gain access to them, the safety, the efficacy, all of that, I think is very confusing to people. So let's just start with, what are peptides?
Peptides are often naturally occurring, although some of the peptides marketed today are also synthetic. But they're generally naturally occurring short chain amino acids that carry out a number of tasks in our body. Imagine when cells meet, when one of your body cells, which is in a fixed location, meets with one of your immune system cells, which is circulating, or one of your stem cells that has been called in for a specific purpose. There has to be an initiation of that conversation. There has to be an initiation of action. Mm-hmm. Peptides are often the words that are spoken before those interactions occur. Mm-hmm. So peptides make things happen. They carry out a number of tasks in the body, including cell-to-cell communication, hormone regulation, immune activities, tissue growth and repair, and neurotransmitter actions.
Okay, so so amino acids, the building blocks of protein, these are multiple proteins together, but just shorter chains there. So something is considered a peptide. I always thought if it was less than 40 amino acids, is that correct, versus a protein?
Technically, it's less than 99 amino acids.
Okay.
If you're 99 or fewer, you're a peptide.
Okay.
If you're 9 or fewer, you're a bioregulator.
Okay.
But that's really, the jargon and conversation that is carried out between drug development people and PhDs.
Right.
So what we all regular people can think about a peptide is they're short chain amino acids that are generally naturally occurring, or short chain amino acids that are naturally occurring that have been recognized as getting something important done in our bodies, that have then been borrowed, the structure of those peptides borrowed and synthesized. It might be interesting to your listeners to know that most peptides have been investigated and identified by research funded by Big Pharma. Mm-hmm. Big Pharma is constantly looking for solutions, better solutions to different disease processes.
Right.
And that's both the good and bad that Big Pharma brings us. The good part is that they are constantly searching for better solutions. And the bad part is that they're mostly focused on disease. Mm-hmm. Many of the peptides that they have begun investigating, identified, and understand, which is some of the peptides we're going to discuss today, for whatever reason, never met the criteria necessary for that drug company to invest the rest of the money to bring it to market. Probably the longest identified prescription medication that qualifies as a peptide is insulin.
Yeah. I know. I was just going to say, I feel like insulin is sort of, when you were giving that example of the conversation and the cell communication, insulin really is such a perfect example, because I think many people are familiar with needing insulin to remove glucose from the blood. And right. I think so that cell communication, I think, is something that people can understand.
Yeah. Peptides are the negotiators, they're the connectors. Mm-hmm. And often they're the last step in the connection that we want to make, like the GLP-1 drugs are the last step in reconnecting us to energy that has been sequestered by our natural processes, either the natural process of aging, where calorie retrieval from body fat becomes more and more difficult in order to conserve body fat in the event of emergency or in the event of difficulty, or in younger people who overgrow their body fat, the calories become more difficult to retrieve simply because the system breaks down under the ironically, under the weight of that process. So peptides help us correct some of the errors that we've made, be either behaviorally or biochemically. They also help, and most aptly applied, they help in promoting those better behaviors, those better functions in the body. So they act as messengers, interacting with cell receptors to promote a specific action.
Mm-hmm.
So Big Pharma begins these investigations, usually at the university level, sometimes internal to their own structure. And they begin publishing papers about this peptide or that peptide, and this is what it does, and this is what it doesn't do, and these are the potential harms or risks. This is how it becomes either amplified or diminished in the body. And they make decisions, we don't know how, on an internal level as to which peptides should have more money invested. Some of the more recent drugs for osteoporosis, like Tymlos, is a peptide. It was originally identified as a peptide. It, for whatever reason, made it through the gauntlet of inspection to become a profitable agent if brought to market as a pharmaceutical, got recognized by the FDA and approved. The most popular peptides of late are the GLP-1s. Mm-hmm. In the GLP-1 category, right now there are only 2 peptides that are available, but they're branded under 5 different names.
Right.
Semaglutide is branded as Rybelsus, which is pill form, Ozempic, which is a subcutaneous injection, and Wegovy, which is a sub-Q injection. Those 3 products have different indications, meaning that they had to have different names and structures under the FDA to get approved. And the drug companies that make those 3 brands do that. Same thing with Mounjaro and Zepbound. Mounjaro and Zepbound are the same peptide, which is tirzepatide. It's interesting, too, that those peptides, because they're naturally occurring, are not wholly subject to patent laws. Patent laws do not allow you to claim a naturally occurring agent unless it's modified in some way. So semaglutide and tirzepatide offered generically by registered pharmacies that follow strict manufacturing guidelines. I want to make sure I emphasize that, the importance. Pretty much have identical actions to the brand name drugs. And for the interest of some of the people who are your listeners, the generics are less expensive. A little more demanding in terms of your own use of them. The pens, which are branded as Ozempic, Wegovy, Mounjaro, and Zepbound, the pens are really convenient. They're wonderful, but they're expensive. Mm-hmm. So without drifting into GLP-1 discussion alone, that's the story on peptides. The therapeutic benefits that we get from peptides have become so compelling and popular because they influence growth and repair, immune modulation, skin renewal, fat metabolism, sleep, hormones, antioxidant functions, brain functions, and because they're naturally occurring or a replica of a naturally occurring agent, they seem to be much safer. And I want to make sure that you heard seem to be much safer.
Right. Yeah, there can always be side effects, of course.
Yes, and we don't know, they're not in wide enough use yet.
Right.
What we learned during COVID, what all of us learned during COVID is that to test something and know its true safety, it has to be used by about 45,000 people, where we can really rely upon the information that we have with regard to its safety. And I'm sure that more than 45,000 people are using peptides today, but they're not being monitored, and the adverse side effects are not being recorded. Unless it's a prescription medication, there's no structure for that.
Right. And I was just going to say that many people are getting, or I would maybe even say, or I'll ask you, are the majority of people getting their peptides from compounding pharmacies where they're all being personalized for them?
Well, the peptides that we prescribe are supplied by compounding pharmacies that understand the rigors of compliance.
Mm-hmm.
And they're complying with USP guidelines, with GMP guidelines. They're open to inspection by FDA and government inspectors.
Yeah.
And we know that they're complying because they will often have a product that we're acquiring from them or referring patients to receive from them that they have to withdraw.
Right.
Because
sorry. I just want to make sure. Yeah. I was saying it that I think compounding pharmacies are a great option for people. I was just saying that it must be harder to, like you said, not everyone is getting the exact same thing. So it's harder to know exactly how it's working and the effects on this larger group of people. Is that accurate?
This is anecdotal information. There's a difference. I want to separate the anecdotal information from the rest of the things that I say so that your viewers know.
Right.
Most of what I'm saying is founded in the medical literature. My anecdotal experience in asking different compounding pharmacies, hey, what's going on with your MOTSC? MOTSC is an injectable that has similar effects to the GLP-1s in that it helps recreate a connection to access to calories stored in fat cells. But the sub-Q injection will often cause a burning sensation at the time of injection and a little bump that lasts sometimes for days afterward.
Yeah.
So I've contacted different compounding pharmacies and saying, is this the preservative that you're putting in it? Or what's the problem here? And they say, no, and here's the anecdotal information. They're saying, no, our product is the same as anyone else's product, which implies to me that they're all making the peptides the same way.
Right.
But MOTSC has a specific interaction or signal given off to the histamine containing cells in the body that alarm those cells and cause them to release their histamine, which causes a little burny, stinging effect and a little red nodule that lasts for a couple of days.
Is that the one also that can cause, in very, very rare occasions, but in very rare cases, can that cause anaphylactic shock? Is that the one that I've heard? I know it because I've heard that with one peptide.
Yes. Anything that can trigger an immediate immune system signal can unfortunately set off the alarm to that cascade of events that results in anaphylaxis. So yes, fortunately, the reported incidences of anaphylaxis with peptides is extremely rare.
Right.
But again, we don't have all the information. We don't know how many people are using it. And we don't know how many people have had an adverse reaction, whether it's a minimal reaction like the histamine response that I described. It's a major medical crisis like an anaphylactic reaction. Because we don't have reporting collection data. That's right. Another good thing about the FDA and Big Pharma is that they've agreed that Big Pharma is going to make a concerted effort to collect information and demand information from prescribing physicians on any adverse reactions that we observe.
Right.
And they're going to report those to the FDA. So the answer to how often does an untoward reaction occur to the use of a peptide is a vague answer.
Right. Makes sense.
It doesn't seem like much at all, especially with the spread of their popularity.
Right.
Especially with how many more people seem to be interested in and are acquiring peptides.
Okay, so let's talk about some of the most popular peptides out there right now, aside from, again, the GLP-1s that many people know about. And that's a whole other conversation, or not a totally other conversation, but another conversation. So let's talk about all the others. So I'm going to go through some different categories. Let's talk about the most popular ones for, let's say, repair and tissue repair and injury.
Sure. So tissue repair and injury is a two-step process. The first, healing proceeds as inflammation recedes. So the body's first response to an injury or a breakdown or a wear and tear is an inflammatory response. And you must you must retrieve and retard that inflammatory response in order for the healing process to begin.
Yep.
And one of the problems that we encounter as we grow older is that inflammatory response becomes longer lasting and chronic.
Mm-hmm.
It does two things. It causes more discomfort in our bodies, but it also delays the healing process. And it can delay it indefinitely and interrupt the healing process, which is one of the contributing factors to aging.
Right.
So the two peptides that have been recognized as the most effective in terms of reducing inflammation are BPC 157 and thymosin beta 4, which is also called thymosin 500.
Okay.
So many people think thymosin 500 and thymosin beta 4 are interchangeable, same thing. They differ in that thymosin 500 is less active than thymosin beta 4. So when people are looking for that anti-inflammatory agent, let's say they have an arthritic condition or they have a chronic skin condition, or they have migraine headaches and their doctor just told them that it's due to brain inflammation, and they want to reduce their inflammation, they would be most interested in acquiring BPC 157 or thymosin beta 4.
Okay. Or what about someone with who just had let's say, shoulder surgery?
Sure.
Right. That's when you're using it. That's when I'm seeing people using it, like after surgeries and occasions like that.
So I'll tell you the range of use in my practice. It ranges from serious athletes or people who work out intensely, those people doing high intensity interval training, all the way to post-operative patients. And all along the spectrum. Those doing high intensity interval training often break so much muscle tissue down by their training session that they can't recover by the next time their workout focused on that particular muscle comes around again. So they end up with more inflammation and less muscle building. What they find is that if during their most intense training program, like 6 weeks on, 6 weeks off, they'll use BPC 157 and thymosin beta 4, they'll be able to recover much more quickly in between those workouts. And they'll actually have, they will speed up that axiom that healing proceeds as inflammation recedes. They'll speed up the healing, in this case, the building of actin and myosin and the strengthening of the muscle tissue, the repair of connective tissue that invests the muscle. They speed all that up and they get stronger, bigger, faster. This is especially important for the professional athletes that we take care of.
Right.
And now right now is a big emphasis on that because training camps have begun. And I just want to say this, not for the purpose of those professional athletes, because we're very careful about safeguarding them, but for the purpose of the audience known in general, that professional athletes are restricted from using peptides.
That was going to be my next question. Yeah. Are they able to even use them at all?
No, they can't. And that's been, it's been a recent awareness on the part of the leagues in, adding this new class of drugs to the list of things you can't do because some athletes would be aware and use them, and some athletes wouldn't. And it would create an unfairness in the competition. So no, they're not.
What about frozen shoulder? Do you ever use it for frozen shoulder?
Yes, we do. We our clinic, Lifespan Medicine, offers comprehensive care. Comprehensive care not only covers what's wrong with you and what you want fixed, but also how to prevent the next thing from going wrong, and basically how to oppose the aging process. If aging is defined as the loss of function over time, we're all interested in preserving functionality. We're all interested in preventing that loss of function, which is technically health span.
Right.
And a very long time ago, when I started Lifespan Medicine in the early 1990s, I considered calling it health span medicine. Yeah. But I thought to myself, actually, I have to credit my wife for this. When I told her, what do you think about health span medicine? Like, that's more what I'm going to do. She said, nobody's going to understand that.
I was just going to say, you were ahead of your time, though. People wouldn't have gotten it then. They wouldn't have gotten it. Yeah. That's exactly. You were just way ahead of your time. I love it.
My wife named the clinic. She
Oh,
said,
that's amazing.
yeah. She said, no, you have to use my suggestion, which was Lifespan.
Smart man there listening to your wife. I like it.
What we offer at Lifespan Medicine are these comprehensive programs.
Yeah.
And our comprehensive program, well, I don't want to digress into that. If you're interested, I can explain it later. But basically, peptides have become an active part of what we're doing. And one of the things that I know you're going to ask me about, one of the categories of peptides you're going to ask me about are hormones, because you already did. You said, hey, how about the healing process?
Right.
So after you've reduced inflammation with BPC 157 and thymosin beta 4, what you need are growth factors.
Right.
And many of us have behavioral-oriented lulls in growth factor production. One of the most important influences on that is deep stage sleep. Yeah. And many of us have different patterns and rhythms in our lives because of our work and other responsibilities, that we don't get enough deep stage sleep all the time. And particularly after something like a surgery or an injury, something that, awakens us, it interferes with the growth factor levels. So there are a family of peptides that all end in the word morelin, M-O-R-E-L-I-N, that promote growth hormone secretion. And growth hormone secretion promotes the production on the body's part of IGF-1. Yep. And it's IGF-1, insulin-like growth factor 1, that helps us heal. So the ideal program for these non-professional athletes who are not barred from using peptides to build muscle and strength is to go for a 6-week cycle using BPC 157, thymosin beta 4, combined with tesamorelin. Their choices are tesamorelin, sermorelin, and anamorelin. What I said earlier about peptides being withdrawn at different times, there used to be a fourth member of the family called ipamorelin. And it was coupled by an adjuvant, something that made it even more potent, called CJC. And a lot of people who are familiar with the peptide world know about or have used CJC ipamorelin. Tesamorelin is much more active, and CJC ipamorelin is no longer available. The replacement for that, which is anamorelin, has an advantage in that anamorelin is sublingual. The other morelins are injectable. There's a morelin-like family member called MK677. And MK677 is in the morelin family. It has a morelin last name, but it's well known as MK677. And it was one of the first compounds created by Big Pharma. Lilly created it, or first discovered it, in the late 1990s, because it was an oral medication that could provoke growth hormone secretion. Several reasons it was not brought to market. One was probably that it didn't work as well in children as the injectable form of growth hormone. Another was that Lilly was earning a lot of profit on their growth hormone program.
Right.
So MK677 would have competed with their own product.
Right.
Which unfortunately is one of the other motivations for not bringing these peptides to market as a drug. If it competes with the product you have and it's better than the product you have, it may not work for your profit statements. But the bottom line is, most people, what they don't know about MK677, they're attracted to it because it's an oral agent.
Right.
But what they don't know about MK677 is that it stimulates appetite. So if you're in a frail state, if you're in an assisted living home and you've gone from a weight of 135 to 98 pounds, and you've lost all your muscle, MK677 is an ideal agent. It's an oral agent. It stimulates your appetite. You're going to eat more protein. You're going to build more muscle. You're going to have the growth factors necessary. But if you're 135 and you have been trying to get to 118 for the last 10 years, and now you're 118, you don't take MK677.
No.
You know what? I want to correct myself. A few minutes ago, I said that anamorelin was sublingual. It's not. Anamorelin is a capsule as well.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that was going to be a question that I asked you at the end, actually, after we go through all the different peptides, but I can dive into it right now, was many of them, we think of them as shots because, again, many people are familiar with the GLP-1s that are shots, but I do know that there are other forms of some of these peptides, but for the most part, they are all still subcutaneous, correct?
Yes. Yes, that is true. And there are two problems that come with that. One is the needle phobia barrier.
Yep.
The other problem is that the injectable peptides have to be refrigerated.
Right.
So for people who will travel either regularly or intermittently, that's really going to be difficult. And most people they don't have this information. They don't know. So they don't want to go through a TSA screen with needles in their bag, in their overnight bag. Actually, TSA is really very understanding and forgiving about that. They don't question what's in your needle. Why do you carry? Most of the time it's a diabetic with insulin,
right?
And they don't inspect or search your bags, or at least they never inspected or searched my bags when I was putting through my bags that had peptides on an ice pack,
right?
So I don't think that's going to be a problem. But just the idea of
but it's still more complicated than someone taking a pill.
It really is. And that's why there's a big push in the compounding industry to develop these different means, either encapsulations, topicals, or sublinguals.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just as someone that, I recommend supplements for many different people all the time. And I know that it can be difficult for people to even comply with taking supplements. So it can definitely be more difficult as far as compliance goes for people. But again, if they see incredible benefits, the motivation is obviously there in a greater way. Okay, so let's talk about the next topic for peptides, brain health. What is most common, or what do you most commonly use for brain health?
Sure. So brain health is really sort of a multifocal subject, but for the most part, brain health means I either want to be better at my focus and attention, or I want to preserve my focus and attention.
Yeah.
And for that, the sort of paramount peptide is dihexa. And dihexa also has the convenience of being a capsule.
Oh, wow. Okay.
The two most potent peptides for that are cerebrolysin and epitolon, which often has an H in it and is then transformed into epitholon. But it's either cerebrolysin and epitolon are both administered through IV infusion. It's something that not many of your listeners or viewers are really encountering now, but perhaps in their families, they're encountering loss of cognitive function over time, dementia. And cerebrolysin was initially used as a treatment to forestall dementia, and is still employed in our practice, is still employed as a means of preventing cognitive impairment at the stage of aging, which is a natural impairment of cognition, or that is fueled by the buildup of tau and amyloid proteins, which are now demonstrable in the blood. We strongly advise people to have intermittent courses of cerebrolysin or epitholon.
So if people have Alzheimer's in their family, would you recommend if you had a patient who came in and said, I have Alzheimer's in my family, I feel great, I have, my cognition is great, my brain function's great, I don't have any concerns at the moment, but obviously I'm aging, should I take this? Would you recommend that for prevention?
Have you ever looked at a skincare product and thought, I wonder if this is actually going to work? I mean, I think we've all done that, right? With OneSkin, I never wonder if it's going to work because I have real proof. Their whole company is led by scientists with backgrounds in tissue engineering, stem cell biology, and skin regeneration. And their products are backed by rigorous lab and clinical studies. The OS1 body is definitely helping my crepey skin, and I'm obsessed with the tinted OS1 Face SPF. It feels like butter going on, and it feels so good knowing that it's moisturizing my skin and protecting it all at the same time. I just love it. At the heart of their topical supplements is their proprietary OS1 peptide, the first ingredient scientifically proven to reverse skin's biological age by targeting cellular senescence. Those are those zombie cells that make your skin age faster than it needs to. Think about that crepey skin that we all want to get rid of. The research on their OS1 peptide has been published in peer-reviewed journals such as NPJ Aging. And not only that, the data for OS1 and their products clearly are listed on their website, so you can learn all about that and the incredible science behind all of their products. In lab studies, they've measured a 130% increase in collagen production with their OS1 eye cream. And another study showed that their SPF neutralizes free radicals. Those are those bad guy compounds that I always talk about, 4 times more effectively than other so-called anti-aging sunscreens. The proof is in the numbers, friends. Try OneSkin and see for yourself. And you can get 15% off your first order with the code Keri, that's Keri, at oneskin.co/Keri. That's oneskin.co/Keri.
Not initially.
Okay.
In some circumstances, yes. But eventually I think we're going to get around to my opportunity to say this. So I'll say it now. But what you've learned in your practice over your career, and what I've learned in mine over my career, is that the best outcomes are produced by a knowledgeable individual advising you how to customize your program. And we didn't know this when I started my practice. It was known when you started yours, but that's just a difference in age, that each of us are genetically unique. Each of us have so much genetic individuality that matching good ideas to us really requires some sorting of those good ideas. For example.
Yeah, absolutely. Makes total sense.
The brain active peptides that I didn't mention but want to now are Semax, Selenk, and Synapsin. Semax, Selenk, and Synapsin are intranasal sprays.
Okay.
And Semax, Selenk, and Synaptin have very specific activities, but in general help you feel better and function better cognitively. So for a person who is, let's say, a 50-year-old woman whose 86-year-old grandmother has now been diagnosed with dementia. She was cognitively intact when she was 76. She started to show some signs of confusion and forgetfulness when she reached her 80th birthday. And now at 86, she has full-blown dementia.
Yep.
When that woman if that woman came to me at 70, I would say, we can test your levels of amyloid and tau proteins in your blood.
Right.
And if we see that you are in the pool of people who could develop this, because those positive blood levels are not yet definitive in terms of you will develop it, but certainly you're unlikely to develop it until those levels are detected. So if that 70-year-old woman, not the 50-year-old woman, came in and said, this is my situation, I'd say, let's test your blood. If you're in the pool, let's start doing a single course of cerebrolysin per year, a single course of apidolon per year. It's between 5 and 30 days, depending on what your budget allows. So let's do that. And we'll do that every year. And we will definitely prevent minimal cognitive impairment or prolong minimal cognitive impairment that comes with aging. But we'll also be pushing way back on the dementia possibility when you reach your 80s. If that 50-year-old woman came in and said, this is my grandmother, I would say, okay, let's take a look at dihexa, because dihexa is the peptide that helps release BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor that helps the nerves repair themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Take a look at dihexa, and let's see how you react to Samaxin Salank or synapsin. Samaxin and Salank differ from synapsin in that Samaxin and Salank both do very specific things. Synapsin is more of an energetic agent for the brain. Synapsin is a way that you can introduce NAD to the brain.
Mm-hmm.
NAD is a metabolite that helps convert the energy producing process.
Yeah.
So those are the specific brain peptides that we're very accustomed to using and recommending for people. And again, going back to the best program is the one that is customized to me.
Of course. Absolutely.
And now we have some genetic testing that we can do, albeit still a little pricey. We have some genetic testing that we can do to characterize people individually. And we can certainly listen very carefully and from our experience say, you know what? Samax works better in this circumstance where you don't have quite as much focus and attention and you're lacking a little bit of energy. Salank works in this circumstance where you've got plenty of energy. You're just having trouble focusing because that energy is outpacing your other brain's abilities and you're getting anxious.
Mm-hmm.
And it's actually your anxiety, the fact that you're interrupting other people's sentences, that makes you more of a candidate for Salank. It's the fact that you want to contribute more in these meetings, but you just find yourself unable to initiate the action, that Samax will be more likely. And if you're both, then you can take Samax in the morning and Salank in the afternoon.
I was just going to say, what's the protocol for taking these?
Samax and Salank are usually used, each one of them usually is once a day, one spray intranasal, and, it's actually intranasal sprays, but one spray each side once a day.
Okay.
And because Samax is more of an activator, it's better used in the morning. Because Salank is more of a modulator, it might be better used after you get up and going. And now you've got all the momentum of the energy that you naturally generate in order to be engaged. Now you want to smooth that energy out, utilize it more efficiently and help it last longer. Salank would be the solution to that. And man, if you're just tired, brain tired, synapsin is more of an advantage.
Okay. All right. So let's move on to the next topic, though, coming off of that. What if you're just tired? What if you're tired and you need help with your sleep and or just energy in general? Even maybe you're sleeping well and you're still tired or sleep. So I guess let's cover both of those topics.
Sure. So we'll cover energy first. So energy is generated in our cells by a little power plant called mitochondria.
We all remember the powerhouse of the cell.
Yeah.
Even those of you that didn't study clinical nutrition in school, you definitely learned a little chemistry and biology, I should say, in school at some point, right?
No doubt we've all heard the mighty mitochondria.
Right? Exactly.
So mitochondria are a real focus in medicine now, or in scientific
huge topic.
Huge topic. Because as an overview, each human being is a highly complex system. And what we know about highly complex systems is that they all seek entropy. And what entropy does, it wastes energy, produces waste, which interferes with efficiency. So entropy diminishes efficiency, increases waste, and spends energy on useless projects. If a human being had access to an inexhaustible source of clean energy, of which one has not yet been discovered, closest thing to clean energy is nuclear energy, and we know that comes with complications and potential pitfalls. But if a human being had access to an inexhaustible source of energy, they wouldn't age. They would have enough energy moving from differentiation, which occurs between 25 and 30, into aging, which starts unavoidably at 30, if not sooner. they'd never move into the aging process. They would just continue to have the energy necessary to repair themselves, move the waste out of the body every day, and be 30. You would be eternally 30. We don't have that. So that means we have to focus on the area of energy production, which is the mitochondria, and see what we can do to enhance mitochondria, to improve, to produce mitochondria. The body produces mitochondria as we grow older. It just doesn't produce them as often or as well as they used to. And the mitochondria have error within them. So the new mitochondria that we're producing are also kind of error filled. They're closer to senescent mitochondria than they are youthful mitochondria. So what can we do to help mitochondria? Humanin is the natural peptide that helps mitochondria. SS31 is a synthetic version of humanin. Both are equally effective, and both are great. You do have a little greater chance of an adverse reaction to SS31 than humanin, but that has, because of data collection and reporting, that hasn't really been emphasized. We haven't seen a lot of problems with either one. CB4211 is another peptide that enhances mitochondrial activity. And NAD is not a peptide, but it is a metabolite, an intermediate metabolite, along with alpha ketoglutarate, that helps mitochondria do their job. So in your world and mine, where we identify and recognize nutritional supplementation as being applicable to people who are looking for better health, certainly in this specific way, I'm tired, what can I do? Alpha ketoglutarate or NAD supplementation is a good idea. And matching that with either SS31 or humanin or CB4211 is even a better idea.
Okay. And how are those administered?
They can be oral, and they can be injectable.
Okay.
And, that begs a question you haven't asked, but it's one that I ask myself a lot. And that is, wouldn't the injectable form be more effective? Wouldn't the injectable form be more effective?
Right.
And the answer is two things. The answer is apocryphally, and again, that's anecdotal because there's no scientific research that has said, okay, we took 50 people and divided them into two groups of 25, and they were completely matched in terms of, characterization. We took 25 people who were between the age of 35 and 45, and 25 were between 35 and 45, same gender match, and we gave some of them the injectable form, and we gave the other people the oral form. And this is what we measured. Those studies don't exist. And I don't think they're going to exist unless Big Pharma takes another interest. It gets re-enthused about humanin or about SS31.
Well, so that was a question I was gonna ask you also is, I think so many people are interested in peptides for all of the reasons you're talking about. They're hearing all of these amazing benefits. They're seeing friends or hearing stories about people that are having these amazing, brain benefits, recovery benefits, sleep benefits, energy benefits, skin benefits. And they're also interested because, again, like you explained, these are natural compounds that our bodies create versus pharma. Even if they're synthetic, they're still mimicking what our bodies naturally do. So I think people have a greater interest in them for that reason. I mean, I know I certainly do. But I think that's one of the reasons, again, that people are so interested. But how is that? And some of them are FDA approved and pharma is part of that. But how do you see this? How do you see this going forward? And because I know right now most of these aren't affordable for many people because they're not FDA approved and insurance isn't covering them. And so they're not necessarily accessible to people. So where do you see that going?
So I see short-term possibilities as being pretty remote. And I see longer-term possibilities as being more likely, but, that doesn't do anything for me today. If I've got a condition that peptide that I can't afford or don't know about, isn't available to me today for whatever reason. So the short-term solution, and I know that I'm sure that many of your speakers and people being interviewed use these two initials. And once they use these two initials, everybody kind of gets mesmerized by the initials. And that's all they want to know more about. They don't want to hear about peptides anymore. Now they just want to hear about these two initials. And I bet you could guess those two initials, but they are A and I.
Okay.
So the short-term remedy for this would be the insights gained by machine learning programs, AI programs, that would reveal and identify universal benefits. In other words, widespread benefits for populations of people in these peptides, because that would motivate big pharma.
Right.
Big pharma's not into aging yet.
Right.
They do recognize it because they are doing pilot programs. They're doing explorations of aging. Like, okay, here are the FDA guidelines for a drug approval. And right now, no drug could be approved for aging. The FDA didn't agree to make aging a tentative diagnosis.
Right.
They still haven't made it a diagnosis, but they've agreed to make it a tentative diagnosis in order to fund a study of a medication called metformin, which was, about 40 years old now and was initially prescribed for helping people adjust their blood sugar, to see if metformin actually affects the aging process as well as it looks like it might. That study has still not been funded. That study was talked about by an investigator at Albert Einstein University in New York named Nir Barzilai in the 20-teens, 2017, 2018.
Right.
Nir Barzilai he published a lot of the basic science articles that say, hey, there are 8 or 9 pathways, depending on how you divide them, that we definitely know contribute to the aging process, and metformin favorably influences every process. Let's do a study that looks like, that will look at whether it affects the aging process or not. And nobody's funded that study. And in part, nobody's funded the study because to do it well, you would probably need significant funding, 7-figure funding. And certainly to do it in a way that the FDA would recognize it, you would need that. And then the value of the recognition would be what? We can't make it the FDA won't give us a category for this drug to treat aging. So Big Pharma is looking at all of these different variables, and I'm sure working hard through their lobbying groups to get the government to recognize, hey, you guys got a problem with aging because the boomers are costing you a fortune.
Right.
Social Security is going broke in 2032. Medicare and Medicaid are untouchable until recently, but Medicare is still pretty much untouchable. You guys got a problem. You're going to have to keep these older people working longer. So you're going to have to prolong Social Security benefits.
Right.
I don't know what the numbers are, but if it's 65, you're going to have to make that 75 in order to not bankrupt that system. Medicare is going to need more healthy people. I saw some projections 5 years ago. I saw some projections on the number of people who would be still alive with Alzheimer's disease, stage 4 Alzheimer, meaning they would need 24-hour care and assistance. And that alone would break the system.
Wow.
So Big Pharma is looking at aging. I know we've digressed off the subject, but peptides, but Big Pharma is looking at aging. And when they look at aging, they're going to employ their sophisticated AI programs to go back and look at what they've already spent some money on. Like, what about this SS31?
Right.
And what about dihexa? And what about a combination of dihexa and SS31, or the combination of cerebrolysin and something else? And perhaps we're going to get a short-term solution. And by short-term, I mean 5 years.
Right.
Perhaps we're going to get a 5-year solution to an answer to the question of, come on, guys, let's make these more available so that everybody stays healthier and we all become longer consumers.
Right. Isn't it? I think it was Walter Longo that, and I think it's in his book where he talks about, that if we had been researching aging the way we researched cancer, like we would have figured it out, that it's actually easier to study cellular health than it is to study things like cancer. And I might be paraphrasing that incorrectly from what he said exactly, but I think that's something that, I mean, I know many people in that space are talking about like that. Would you agree with that? That just cellular health and the study of cellular health is something that's actually not as complicated to research as many other topics that or conditions, diseases that have been studied. It's just that people didn't think of it as something to study until fairly recently, relatively recently. Curious thoughts on that.
I wholly agree with that.
Okay.
And I did read Dr. Longo's book, and I believe that theme was very strongly represented in that. So I think you're correct in that.
Mm-hmm.
And, Dr. Longo studied and wrote the book and created a program, the Prolonged Fasting Mimicking Diet, based on the beneficial effects of autophagy.
Mm-hmm.
And what I asked at a seminar a couple of years ago is, has anybody studied the actual process of autophagy? Again, I don't want to digress, but what I would be interested in is what peptides are in the autophagy conversation.
Right.
Because at Lifespan, we're prescribing specific medications for off-label use, in this case, to enhance autophagy. Your viewers and listeners probably know about this. Rapamycin and dasatinib have been identified as helping these senescent cells dissolve. And we can't think of it as a cell death. It's actually about cell rebirth. When a senescent cell dissolves, a stem cell replaces it with a new cell. So it dissolves in the process of labor and delivery. It will then create a new cell from its dissolution. So helping our senescent cells get through labor and bearing these new cells for us are going to keep us healthier and more functional for a longer period of time. Where are the peptides? How about that one? I would much rather prescribe a peptide to encourage autophagy than I would one of the medications.
Right.
I would also rather prescribe the prolonged fasting mimicking diet for autophagy.
Right.
But as you know, and your listeners know, that's a lot harder to comply with.
Well, I was just going to say, I think that this whole conversation, it should go without saying that there are some basic things that everyone should be doing before you even introduce peptides. And that's not just because, and what maybe you agree with that or you don't, but I would say that, somebody that is staying up till 3 a.m. and drinking excessive amounts of alcohol and eating a, highly ultra processed diet, taking some peptide, like they're not going to necessarily like reap all those benefits, or it's sort of a way, like they've got other things to fix first. Like you have to do the foundational things first and then layer on these additional things. I would say the same thing even for supplements. Like don't just start taking a supplement, like when you're doing all these other things like a vitamin C, even something as simple as that to support your immune system when you're doing all these things that are, decreasing your immune system. So, you have to kind of have those foundational things in order first. And I'm sure that you do that in your practice, that you help people, you look at their entire lifestyle and you help them build those foundational daily habits that we can do to build and support our health. And then in addition to that, you layer on things like peptides and obviously medications in certain cases. But when you just said that with the intermittent fasting thing, I was going to say that too. And we don't have to get into an intermittent fasting conversation. I think it can be right for some people and not right for some people. But again, that's a whole other conversation. But I want to say, but I'm glad you brought up that point, because sometimes like there are some basic things that people can do, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to comply, right?
So, this is where your practice and mine and all the practices focused on health and well-being.
Yeah.
Mostly fall under the category of integrative medicine.
Right.
This is where we all converge. So what I realized a long time ago in the 1980s, which is now ancient history, is that the body is dependent.
I loved the 80s, by the way. I'm an 80s girl. I loved the 80s.
I'm surprised you were even there. But what I learned about that after practicing reactive medicine or interventive medicine, which is, basically a process of name that disease and know that prescription. I practiced that vigorously for a number of years. And what I learned in the process was, this isn't working. What would work better is if we lived in such a way that we wouldn't get these things, or when we got these things, they would be more subtle and slow in occurring so that it would be easier to oppose or dismantle. And I got to come up with a practice or a way to do that. And what I learned in the process in the bespoke education, because I didn't learn much or enough about these things in medical school, was that the body relies upon diet, exercise, sleep, and perspective. Not necessarily in that proportion. If I were to, what I've learned now, reproportioning them, it probably relies upon diet, perspective, sleep, and exercise. But I've so long said it in the other pattern of diet, exercise, sleep, and perspective that I can't make I have a neural groove to that now. Diet is the foundation cornerstone, and that's where you and I stand on the same foundation. Exercise is also movement. And we've learned that exercise can be exercise or exercise can be movement. But the problem is that most of us are paid and rewarded for sitting. And movement has become secondary. It's become a weekend thing, or it's become a have to thing instead of want to thing.
Or there's also, I come across this all the time, people that exercise every single day, but they go to an exercise class or they go to the gym for 45 minutes or 60 minutes and they think they're doing a great job. And guess what they're doing the rest of the entire day? The other 23 hours a day, they're sitting on their butts.
Right.
And so that is not, I always say, I'd rather someone not go to the gym. I'd like people to go to the gym, go to their classes and all that. But if they have to choose one or the other, I'd rather someone have a lifestyle where they were up and moving every single hour, even if they didn't consider it exercise. That to me is just such a healthier way of life. Now, ideally you would be doing both, but I think that there's just a huge group of people out there that, again, think they're checking that box every day. Got to the gym, got to my Pilates class, got to my HIIT class, but then they're doing nothing else. So again, you have to be careful how you talk to people about that, because you don't want people then say, "Oh, that's not really doing anything." It is, but you have to adjust your lifestyle as much as possible to be moving. So I'm totally with you there.
The sleep part is, of course, a very big factor, and it becomes more and more a factor when linked with imbalanced perspective. Perspective is what you think of yourself and your place in the world, and it's heavily influenced by what you thought of yourself and your place in the world at different stages of your life. In our perspective, the committee creating our perspective every day is subliminal. We're not aware of it. But there's a 5-year-old at that table. There's a 15-year-old at that table. There's a 30-year-old at that table. And there's the person we are now at that table. And oftentimes the person we are now gets outvoted. Meaning the 5-year-old says, that doesn't sound safe to me. That's not safe. We can't do that. And we have to avoid anything that would bring shame upon ourselves. The 15-year-old says, well, I don't think that'll be very popular. And we need to be popular. We need to integrate ourselves into our peer group. And the 30-year-old says, hey, what about us? We really need to take care of ourselves. And I think we can bend that ethic a little bit. Well, that'll be okay. We don't have to tell the whole truth. And, here we are in our current day trying to make the decision on how do we feel about this thing. And how we feel about it has a pretty heavy influence over what we decide to do, including health maintenance, whether we decide we look good, we don't look good, we need to look better, how we're going to look better. Are we going to look better by taking something or look better by changing a behavior? So this platform or foundation is diet, exercise, sleep, and perspective. We all need to take a look at that in our current form and our current, level of maturity and insight and say, you know what? I need to make some changes here because I'll have a better future. I'll have a better now sooner, and I'll have a better future long term.
Yeah. I think sometimes it's big triggering events that get people to sort of adjust their perspective.
Yeah. Oh, sure. I'm in the business of making diagnoses, and a diagnosis will change somebody's mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
They'll change their behavior. But that's like a penalty. That's like, okay, now you have to change your behavior for punishment.
Right. Right.
Whereas it feels much better to change your behavior from motivation.
Right. Absolutely. Okay. So before we wrap up, I want to ask you about one other category for peptides. If you have a few more moments, I would love to ask you one more category that I'm particularly interested in is skin. And I know many viewers out there are interested too in all ways to, keep that youthful glow going. So peptides for skin.
Yeah. So the main peptide for skin is GHK.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes GHK is coupled with copper and sometimes it's used alone. But there are other peptides that people, on my side of the business or my side of the practice know about and other people don't know about. It has to do with something called SNAP8, Lufazol, argilerine, matrixyl. And some of these peptides that I just mentioned, the GHK is my domain because I get to prescribe that and compounding physicians get to use it or make it for me. And it comes in a topical and it also comes in an injectable. But for the benefit of your listeners who, for whatever reason, are not going to go to a doctor or going to go to a doctor and not get advice on peptides or not be able to afford the peptides, there are a number of commercial products that have already incorporated this. What I've noticed over my career is that the dermatologic industry, the dermatologic professionals, they incorporate scientific advances faster than the rest of the areas of the body. The GI guys are slow. The brain guys are slower. The skin guys are right on it, and they have peptide products. There's a product called Matrixyl. There's another one called CU Peptides, another called Derma E. One
Skin is my favorite. That's my go-to. And they have the OS1.
Yeah, OS1, great.
I think that is an incredible product. And I think they specifically fight those senescent zombie cells. I know that. So anyway, I love that product.
Yes, they do. So good pickup. Quick note on sleep. The peptide for sleep is called DSIP. It's got sleep in its name. That's the S.
Oh, okay. Perfect.
It more helps you remain asleep than stay asleep. Both problems are very prevalent in our society. I would like to know more about sleep targeted peptides. And I would say that peptides would be a big relief because we're all very conscious about prescribing medications to help people sleep, knowing two things, and this is the rock and the hard place. The first thing we know is that not sleeping enough or sleeping well enough is going to really hurt your health.
Mm-hmm.
And the medicines we're going to give you that are going to help you sleep or sleep better over time are going to also deteriorate your health.
Yeah.
So we need a better solution than this.
Mm-hmm.
The problem with sleep, as I see it, is that sleep is the last piece of a 24-hour jigsaw puzzle. And the shape of every other piece that you carve during the day creates the shape of that sleep piece.
Mm-hmm.
And often we don't create space for sleep. We don't create a rhythmic pattern of our lifestyle that encourages us to sleep. And when we do, it doesn't encourage particularly restful sleep.
Right. Well, and especially now, people going to bed, scrolling on their phone before they go to bed, going straight from, doing some work on their computer or, then they get into bed with their phone. I mean, it's a mess. All the blue light, maybe they're exercising after work at the end of the day too. I mean, maybe they had an espresso at the end of the day to have energy for that last, meeting. I mean, there's people are doing all kinds of things wrong. Yeah. I absolutely agree with you.
And when you confront that individual with their behavior, if all you do is expose it, you haven't helped them.
Right.
You have to expose it with a solution. You have to expose it by saying, okay, how about we change this? How about no caffeine after 4 p.m. and just look at all your electronic devices, including your iPhone, including your iPad, including your computer screen, And somewhere in there is going to be a blue light filter screen that will save you from having to put on blue light glasses after sundown.
Yeah.
Turn off the overheads.
Yeah. There's lots of things that people can do that I always say, like, there's lots of things that people can do on a daily basis that are free, because oftentimes people do associate many of these wellness hacks, tools, things as being expensive. Many things that are free, most of the foundational things are free and actually don't take that much time and are easy. It's just getting into the habit of doing them. So I always say, like, actionable, doable tools is a big part. I mean, that's that's what I love to do, is help people with that, and then layer on all of these other exciting tools, like the tools that you use in your practice.
Yeah, we're doing the same thing for a slightly different group of people, and we're doing it in very similar or compatible ways for sure.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so my last question for you: how do you ignite your nutritious life on a daily basis?
I eat according to my serotype diet. So that's another conversation. Lectins and food and immunology and microbiome. That's a whole other topic.
Oh, I'm going to have you back on.
Okay. But I would say I'm an 80-20 guy, where 80% of the time I'm eating by the rules, and 20% I give myself a little latitude. I exercise on a regular basis, but to your point, I move on a regular basis. And make sure that I'm getting my minimum 6,000 steps in addition to my workouts, in addition to the now evolving and targeted workouts. Mm-hmm. At a much earlier age than this, heavy weightlifting no longer becomes a safe and productive practice. More repetitive weightlifting and moderate weights and different types of integrative exercises for the nervous system as well as the musculoskeletal system become much more beneficial. I have a very strict rule and habit with regard to sleep. And I maintain an attitude of gratitude. I found that gratitude, realizing really how lucky I am for, I think I could probably list 1 million reasons. And if you paid me $1 for each one, I know I could list at least 100,000. There's so many reasons for me to be grateful. Mm-hmm. Just maintaining that attitude of generosity, that attitude of peace, that attitude of, it's okay, I'm okay. This isn't the end of the world. Whatever I missed, or whatever you missed, or whatever somebody did or didn't do, it's okay. Let's just do it now. So maintaining that foundation, and then building upon that the superstructure of social engagements, joy, interests, new activities, learning new things. That's my nutritious life.
I love it. I absolutely love it. Thank you so, so much for being here. I'm going to include in the show notes where people can find you and link to your practice and all the exciting stuff you have going on. So I'm super excited to do that. And just thank you so much for being here with our listeners today.
It was a real pleasure, Keri. Thank you.
Have you ever looked at a skincare product and thought, I wonder if this is actually going to work? I mean, I think we've all done that, right? With OneSkin, I never wonder if it's going to work because I have real proof. Their whole company is led by scientists with backgrounds in tissue engineering, stem cell biology, and skin regeneration. And their products are backed by rigorous lab and clinical studies. The OS1 body is definitely helping my crepey skin, and I'm obsessed with the tinted OS1 Face SPF. It feels like butter going on, and it feels so good knowing that it's moisturizing my skin and protecting it all at the same time. I just love it. At the heart of their topical supplements is their proprietary OS1 peptide, the first ingredient scientifically proven to reverse skin's biological age by targeting cellular senescence. Those are those zombie cells that make your skin age faster than it needs to. Think about that crepey skin that we all want to get rid of. The research on their OS1 peptide has been published in peer-reviewed journals such as NPJ Aging. And not only that, the data for OS1 and their products clearly are listed on their website, so you can learn all about that and the incredible science behind all of their products. In lab studies, they've measured a 130% increase in collagen production with their OS1 eye cream. And another study showed that their SPF neutralizes free radicals. Those are those bad guy compounds that I always talk about, 4 times more effectively than other so-called anti-aging sunscreens. The proof is in the numbers, friends. Try OneSkin and see for yourself. And you can get 15% off your first order with the code Keri, that's KERI, at oneskin.co/Keri. That's oneskin.co/Keri.